does one develop patience, especially when on the spiritual path? We start our journey with the realization that we've been in darkness all these years and lifetimes. And now, despite our conviction, despite our commitments, we seem to be making no progress, or maybe some at a snail's pace. Yeah, welcome to the human condition. And there's really two aspects here. One is our spiritual practice, and the other is our interaction with our spiritual practice. And they're really different. Our interaction with our spiritual practice is I interact with it pretty much the way I interact with everything. And so if in my life, one of my identities, one of the clothes on me is I'm never good enough, I'm never smart enough, no matter what I do, it's never enough. And a lot of us have this complex. I know I do. I never go to sleep at night feeling like, oh, well, thank God everything is done. There's always a sense of, my God, really, this was all I could accomplish today? You know, okay, maybe tomorrow I'll be able to do more. If only I didn't have to sleep, if only I didn't need to eat, if only I didn't need to bathe, if only then I could be of more service. You love someone. You want to give to them. There's always a sense. This is where, especially in India, but definitely not exclusively India, you eat at a table and whoever's feeding you, particularly if it's the mother, you're never allowed to be done. You know, I mean, it's chapati after chapati after chapati after chapati, and it doesn't matter how much you've eaten. It's never enough because it's an expression of love, and she's wanting to serve you. That's how so many people, women in particular, are trained on a very deep level. This is how we show love. We feed, and so the food becomes love. And because I love you, well, yeah, you better eat more chapatis because like this is my love. And so there's never enough. It doesn't matter how much you eat. I'm never going to feel like, oh, thank God. I'm always going to wish, oh, God, maybe I should have made that. He could have had a little more of this. He really liked that. There probably wasn't enough salt in this. So on some level, many of us live with a pretty pervasive sense of not being quite good enough, not quite enough, not quite able to do what we'd like to do as well as we'd like to do it, whether in quantity or in quality. And so, since that's how we interact with the world, our spiritual practice is part of our world. And so you embark on a spiritual path, and yeah, I'm not moving fast enough. It's not happening fast enough. And interestingly, if you've actually been graced and blessed with a very profound spiritual experience, you can't get back there. You can't get back there quickly enough. You can't make it last long enough. It dissipates too quickly. You want it to last longer, and then it's gone, and then it takes too long to get it back. And it doesn't matter whether the too long is 3 minutes or 3 years. However long it may be for you, it feels like too long. And so that's one aspect, and this is where it's so important on every level to just always keep reminding ourselves we are enough. And whether it's in doing our work or feeding our loved ones or doing our spiritual practice, whatever it is, wherever it is, as long as we're sincere about it. There's a beautiful saint who comes every year to our International Yoga Festival named Puja Sri Shankaracharya-ji, and he's one of the very highest seats in the Hindu tradition. And one of the things that he always emphasizes is the importance simply of sincerity. That it's not about how much, it's about how sincere. And that's really what matters much more than anything. And on our yogic path, on our spiritual path, is it's our sincerity. How sincerely am I doing it? So whether I'm meditating, whether I'm doing seva, whether I'm chanting, whatever I'm doing as my spiritual practice, A, I'm enough, therefore it's enough. And B, the crucial aspect is my sincerity. So it's not about how far, it's not a race, any of it, but especially our spiritual path. It's not how far, it's not how high, it's not how much. It's how sincere. How connected am I to what I'm doing? How fully am I present with what am I doing? How connected to the purpose of what I'm doing? So that's the general, I interact with my spiritual path the way I interact with everything. But then very specifically, when we feel like we're not making progress, a lot of times this happens because the mind is the one. We've talked a lot about the mind, but the mind really is the medium through which we have to go, like it or not. As I said last night, it's your Siamese twin, it's there. And so even if it's a state of expanded consciousness, a state of samadhi, I'm experiencing it through my mind. If you removed my brain, I would not have that experience. If you put me into one of those machines with, different areas of my brain being stimulated by probes, I would be having a completely different experience. If you gave me drugs, chemicals that altered my brain, I would be having a completely different experience. So while our enlightenment, our consciousness, certainly does not live in our brain or mind, that's the medium through which we experience it. The same way that Hari Om does not exist in my eyes, but my eyes are the medium through which I experience his existence. If I close my eyes, unless he speaks, I have no way of knowing he exists. Now, obviously, my eyes don't impact his existence, but they impact my ability to experience his existence. They impact my ability to interact with his existence. They impact his existence's ability to change me. So in the same way, our spiritual path and the progress we experience, the revelations we have, the experiences we have, our mind is still the medium through which we experience that. And yet, the mind is the greatest obstacle. Because actually the mind operates in separateness. The mind thinks about things, so the mind has to hold everything at an arm's length and look at it. Whereas spirituality is about breaking the separation between me and the divine, me and the creator, me and the creation, me and everything. But I've got to go through my mind. And so depending on the sanskaras or the patterns of my mind, I'm going to experience my spiritual path in a different way. There are some people who just by nature or by nurture, depending on how they were raised, but who by the time they've come to a path, it's all a sum total. Nature, nurture, it's all come together, whether it's their genes or whether it's their environment or whether it's their past karma, whatever it is, it's come into the sum total of right here, right now, this is you. And for some of us, we have brains that are very, very active. Some people have minds that are much stiller. And you know this about people's personality. And it's a lot easier to find stillness in a place where there was already stillness. It's going to be quicker. Because in order to experience any of it, we have to be able to quiet the mind. And the faster the mind is running, the more, I don't like the word effort because it implies this sort of strenuous perspiration, but the more attention, the more intention, the more sincerity we're going to have to put into bringing the mind still enough so that I can actually have an experience that is beyond my mind. An experience beyond separation, an experience of oneness. So don't worry if you feel like you're not making any progress. First of all, you are, for sure. Second of all, this is a practice, it's a path. It's not about black and white. Every day, you should feel closer to God. You should feel closer to your true self. And if you're really not, despite your spiritual practice, then this is where sometimes, a little bit of psychology comes in. I've got an academic background in psychology and came to India and had an incredible spiritual experience and sort of forsook psychology for a while, and then over the course of the last 20 plus years, have actually realized that it too plays a very important role, because a lot of times that which blocks us, it's our mind, but it's stuff that we need to look at. And it's not stuff, sadly, that you can just meditate away. And by not looking at it, it keeps, every time you get still, it keeps coming back. And there it is, it's the elephant in the room. And this is where some psychology comes in, all right? What is it? What is it that's blocking me? What aspect of my mind? Because we're all made up of it in slightly different proportions. So there's anger, there's ego, there's jealousy, there's sense of not enoughness, there's fear, there's so many different aspects of the mind. There's the walls we build to protect ourselves that actually end up suffocating us. We all have different ways we move through the world. And knowing what your way is, being able to really look at it, helps you dismantle it. A lot of times, simply honestly looking at it is enough to help it dissipate. And if not, there's all sorts of other practices, that you can go into. The practice for me that's been very, very, very powerful is a practice of ritual. Literally, giving it. Okay, God, you put it there, I'm giving it back to you, please. Thank you for it. It's taught me so much over these years. Thank you for it. It's gotten me here. But I don't need it anymore. Now it's blocking me. Can I give it back? Will you take it? And the answer is always yes. If you give it sincerely, the answer is always yes. And while you're here on the banks of Ganga, Ganga always takes it. That's what Ganga does. Ganga washes away. Typically people come to wash away past karma. Whether it's previous lifetimes, whether it's this lifetime. Whatever it is, just offer it to her. This is blocking me. This is preventing me from living in the light. These are the curtains on my window. I know the sun is shining. But these curtains are on my window. This dirt is on my window. I offer it to you. And it'll happen. Slowly, 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 or by God's grace, quickly. Either way, it'll happen for sure. Because it is our true self. Just like when we were talking about Hariom in his bath, he could take off his clothes as slowly as he wants. But eventually he's going to get naked. Eventually he'll be ready for the bath. And so don't worry about how long it takes you to get them off. As long as you're moving in the right direction, you're going to get there.